Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, your ticket to all things college football. Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? Join us as we talk college football, from the national championship to college rivalries to bowl games to the Heisman Trophy to which conference is the best. We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Danielle. Thank you so much for tuning in with me on this, I hope it's lovely, Thursday. When you are listening, maybe you're listening to this Friday, who knows. I'm recording this on Tuesday, November 3rd. You might have some significance. That date is Election Day. It is very stressful. I debated when I was going to record this. I was going to record it last night, and I just was so tired. I was exhausted. Daylight savings people, I don't know if anyone else is having this. I have not been able to sleep in. And I mean sleep in like till 8 a.m. I'm talking like 6 a.m. I am up, like can't sleep. Maybe it's because I don't close my blinds, which is my fault. But I have been exhausted recently. Which I think is 100% normal. But I was going to record this last night, and then I was just exhausted from school, and then I was like, no, I'll record this Wednesday, but then I was like, Wednesday, I will be much more anxious than I already am now. I don't remember being this anxious about the 2016 election. I was 17 at the time, so I could not vote, and I voted this year. It's my first time voting, and I'm very stressed out, to say the least. Not to get too political, but this is a pretty important election, in my opinion, and given everything going on, the world's kind of crazy to think that tomorrow we might have a new president if the votes are counted. I hope you guys have all voted. If you're not, if you didn't, I can't really say because this is past the time, but I'm very stressed about that. Very anxious. I don't think there's any denying that. I was with my boyfriend last night, and I was talking about how I didn't sleep, and I think a lot of that was due to the election. I remember last election, 2016, I woke up around 3 a.m. and had like a fever dream that Trump won, and not to get too political here, but I just was like, oh, Hillary's gonna win, and I woke up and I went on Twitter, and I was so confused. I was like half awake, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think Trump won. I remember like frantically going upstairs to call my mom and tell her, and she'd be like, I woke her up, and she was like, I've been up since 2, honestly, like he won, I'm scared. I was so terrified. I'm still terrified. I'm really scared of how this election is gonna go. I'm really scared about how everything's gonna happen. So election stress is real today, people. I think I have a good plan for my election stress. Part of that is recording this podcast and taking some time off from thinking about it. But other than that, I'm probably going to de-stress today. I keep seeing all these TikToks of like, we're starting a civil war, and I really hope not, but it's a scary time, and I'm really grateful that I'm informed and I'm aware about this election, and I'm really grateful that I consider myself educated on the topics at hand and things I care about. It is a really scary time, and so I hope you're all staying safe wherever you are. If you're in major cities, I know I have friends in New York and Boston that have stocked up on groceries for the week and are afraid to leave their house today, Tuesday. So hopefully all of you guys in major cities are safe. I am grateful that I am in my parents' suburbs right now, so it's not as scary of a place. But yeah, times are scary, and I hope you guys are all staying safe. But let's get on to a happier note, not really happier, I guess you could say, because we are going to talk about the election. But on today's podcast, we are going to be looking at college football during an election year. Kind of crazy, especially during COVID. We've seen a lot of changes happening, and so I kind of want to review that, talk about that a little. We're also going to get into the AP Top 25 poll, as well as winners and losers from Week 9. We are then going to preview Week 10, which features 2 huge matchups between 2 pivotal teams. and we're going to look at the top plays from week 9. So without further ado, people, let's get into it. Our first segment, as you guys may know, the NCAA has announced that today is a day off for all football programs and all fall sports that are playing to go and vote. And some coaches aren't happy about that. I understand, because Tuesdays are usually the most important day in terms of game planning, structuring, etc. But there's no better example of a professional stereotype that comes to life than 4 years ago when Alabama coach Nick Saban famously said after the 2016 election that he didn't even realize it had happened. He said, "We focus on other things here. Whether it's true, it is impossible for Saban or any other coach to say that this year. That is because the NCAA, picking up on an idea that started at Georgia Tech, decided last month that they would make it an official policy for all Division I athletes to have Election Day off. In other words, any coach who would schedule a practice for this Tuesday today would be violating NCAA rules. You might be surprised to learn that amidst the protests against racial inequality and police brutality that many of these players participated in this summer, some football coaches aren't keen on the disruption of their normal week. I understand that, but I apologize. I think that the election is bigger than that. In a lot of programs, Tuesdays are the most important practice day when it comes to the game plan. For the following week, opponents get introduced. Plus, a lot of coaches aren't convinced that the off day will serve as much of a purpose, given that many of their players have had to vote by out-of-state absentee ballot anyways, or have done early voting. We worked really hard with our teams so that anybody who wasn't registered is now registered, and we have our people administratively help get them their ballots, make sure they're voting, and have voted," said Duke's coach David Cutcliffe. So it's a little more. I think it's a little more showy, honestly. I'll just say it like it is, that it has its purpose. I do agree with him on that. I know I've participated in early voting. I know a lot of people have. We've seen record turnouts in early voting this year, especially from the 18 to 22 demographic, which is the majority of college football players. I do agree with him on that, but I think the NCAA didn't, obviously this is my speculation, but I think the NCAA didn't just want to make Election Day a day off so they could vote. I think they wanted it to be a day of reflection and recognizing the significance of this. An election is always important, but especially in today's day and age. So I think that they didn't just do it so that players could go vote. They did it so we can recognize the significance of not only elections, but this election, like I said. And I understand the frustration. I understand it completely. It is annoying. It is frustrating. I mean, I am not preparing to play Notre Dame on Saturday as Clemson is, but I have my own things in life that are being disrupted by the election, and it is frustrating, but at the same time, recognizing how important this election is and staying politically up to date on everything. A lot of these players did participate in purely racial injustice protests, Black Lives Matter, all of that which we'll get into. And so I think it is a little frustrating for coaches to say that there are bigger things to worry about than that, because for so many of these players, this is a day-to-day thing they go through with racial injustice, and that is at the heart of this election this year, along with COVID and climate change and women's rights. So I don't mean to get too political on here, people, but I agree with Duke's coach and the coaches in general that it is frustrating, but I do think that we have to recognize the significance of this election. Coach Dabo Swinney told reporters earlier this month that he didn't really understand the day off thing and wasn't happy about having to move things around before their key game against Notre Dame. Louisville coaches Scott Scatterfield said the day won't help his players vote since most of them have already done it. I understand the premise, and the NCAA say we're going to focus on that. I get it, but our guys have already handled their business with that. So in a sense, like I said, you understand where they're coming from. Good coaches are task-oriented and don't want to waste time. So if they've already done the necessary things to help their players vote, what's the point of wasting the day away? But the counter-argument is much more persuasive, and that's why basketball assistant coach Eric Romino came up with the idea, which spread to all of Georgia Tech athletics, the school, and the entire NCAA. Romino is one of the most thoughtful people to come across in college athletics. He was educated at Stanford, played professionally in Japan, former head coach at Portland, and has long been vocal about systemic problems within the NCAA structure and the right of college athletes. And this summer, he realized through conversations with players following the killing of George Floyd that there's a blind spot in his career. It is so much to me. What have I done in my lifetime as a coach to engage the student athletes in their most basic civil responsibility? What have I done? and I'd have to face the reality I haven't done much. In 24 years, I don't remember a team meeting, an athletic department staff meeting. I don't remember anything within a department where we did anything about voting. I've done that on I've done stuff on financial literacy, mental wellness, and yet haven't done the most basic civic engagement piece, and it hit a ton of bricks for me. So, like I said, the coaches do not like it. I think, like Georgia Tech's coach Ravina was pointing out, that this is not just about getting the players to vote, it's about recognizing what's at stake. And yeah, obviously people are upset. It'll be interesting to see how this day off affects games on Saturday, but I hope all these players have voted. That if they can, they have. And I've talked about this as well, but something I also want to touch on in this election year is how sports have kind of swung the election. So an interesting piece from The Guardian came out about, if you guys remember, in, I believe it was the first presidential debate, Donald Trump was very vocal about the fact that he brought Big Ten football back, and he was responsible for college football this season. That's not a direct quote. That is a summary of what he said. But any conservative pundits who declared the Big Ten decision as a Kevin Warren, the Big Ten's first-year commissioner, who has been in over his head almost from the start, has been branded a left-wing activist thanks to a Yahoo Sports article from June that described his plans for a conference-wide voter registration initiative. Same for the presidents and chancellors, whose every previous statement critical of Trump has been dredged up as evidence of a conspiracy against the president. Any conservative pundits have declared the Big Ten's decision is a concerted effort to make Trump look bad in regions where college football is critical to the economy. Charlie Clerk has described the Big Ten's efforts as discussing as pathetic. So if you're wondering what I'm talking about, essentially, Trump has made a very big point that he brought Big Ten football back, and the Big Ten commissioner and Big Ten leagues across the country are saying, no, you didn't. Life is about trade-offs. Nebraska Senator Ben Swasey wrote in August, "But the structure and discipline of football programs is likely safer than what the lived experience of 18 to 22-year-olds would be if there wasn't a season." This was said by Ben Swasey in August. So these quotes all kind of talk about how football became politicized this season. Hall of Famer coach Lou Holtz said, "Let's move on with our lives. When we stay in normality, they know there are going to be casualties." So all this is kind of to say that football has become political. Trump has mentioned in the 2020 debates how he brought football back. Going into the home stretch of the 2020 presidential election, Trump has seized on an unusual political tactic, taking credit for the return of Big Ten football to appeal to sports-crazed voters in key Midwestern swing states. Like I've said a billion times, it feels like the states that the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, the two conferences who opted out of playing originally, the Pac-12 is made up of mostly blue states, while the Big Ten is made up of mostly red or swing states. And it is clear that Trump prioritized putting those states over everything else because he knew that getting to the football-crazed Midwestern voters and saying, I brought Big Ten football back, I brought back your favorite thing, could swing votes there. The conference announced August 11th they would postpone the football season amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Trump slammed the decision and lobbied publicly for the return. On September 16th, Big Ten officials reversed their course. For the president, it's a chance to spike the football before fans in crucial electoral college states. We got Big Ten open, Trump told sports journalist Jason Whitlock in an interview released on Thursday. The play hasn't worked very well, according to a new state poll from Arizona State Global Institute. The survey of undecided voters who identify as college football fans and live in closely contested Midwest states with Big Ten schools or other key states found that just 2% of the cohort would be more likely to vote for Trump because he claimed to bring Big Ten football back. Another 7%, they'd be somewhat likely to vote for him. But whatever gains Trump appears to have made among the small subset of voters was likely upset by those turned off by his boasting. 7% of those surveyed said Trump took credit for the Big Ten, made them less likely or somewhat less likely to vote for Trump. In the end, 84% of voters said the Big Ten strategy had no effect on who they will support. Another poll by the Ohio Predictive Insights, a nonpartisan public opinion research company, surveyed by 400 registered voters who identified as undecided college football fans in Midwestern battleground states with Big Ten schools, Iowa, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Minnesota, as well as the battleground states of Florida, Arizona, and Nevada. Mike Noble, who was the managing partner and director there, questions the efficiency of Trump's strategy of claiming credit for the return of college football during the waning weeks of a campaign. It's not moving the needle, it's not effective, and frankly, if I was an internal team, I'd be like, stop talking about it. The results surprised Noble, a former political consultant and campaign manager. I actually thought there would be a bit more of an effect. Noble said, I feel like if I'm a college football fan, I'm saying right on, that's great. In truth, Trump had little to do with the Big Ten restart. He also claimed credit for the Pac-12's decision to play a season. While Trump did speak with Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren in early September and applied public pressure to change course, play Big Ten football, he tweeted on August 31st. Big Ten administrator and school presidents have gone out of their way to credit improvements in testing rather than presidential input for the reversal. For me, it wasn't about political pressure, money, lawsuits, or anything else that was doing, Northwestern University President Montaigne Shapiro said. It was the unanimous opinion of our medical experts that evolved over the course of weeks. This hasn't stopped Trump from taking a marathon victory lap. It was dead. It was totally dead, Trump told Fox Sports Radio. Outkicked the coverage with Clay Travis on September 17th. And I told my people, look, we got to call. I say, who I'm going to call, what's the head of it? And it was Kevin Warren, who turned out to be really open about it. At the first presidential debate, during a discussion about the economy, Trump pivoted to the talking point. By the way, I brought Big Ten football back. It was me, and I'm very happy to do it. And the people of Ohio are very proud of me. On Fox and Friends, Trump said, I'm the one who got Big Ten and Pac-12 football back. I got that back. That wasn't coming back, and I got it back. Hope people realize that. It was pure and simple me, or whatever. But the message doesn't seem to be landing with critical undecided voters. Among the poll respondents who identified as Big Ten fans in key states, just 1% said they're more likely to vote for Trump. 8% said they're somewhat more likely to vote for him. At the same time, 8% of Big Ten fans said they're turned off by Trump messages, and the overwhelming majority, 83%, said they don't seem to care either way. The poll also provided insight into what the country thinks about a question at the inspection of sports and politics. While some fans have criticized athletes for speaking out about political issues, stick to sports, their refrain goes, they also prefer the reverse holds true. The politicians stay in their lane. Researchers have asked their undecided voters if they agree or disagree with the following statement: it is appropriate for elected officials to become involved in a nationwide stoppage of sporting events. So, yes. And then an article I also want to talk about is from the New York Times back in July, all about Trump making the Big Ten political. Here's the thing, guys. I've talked about this. The SEC, the Big 12, and the ACC are all conferences that have a large portion of red states involved in them, or a decent amount, I should say, seen by last election. And the reason he wasn't lobbying for the Pac-12 to come back is because he knew the Big Ten had more swing states. Plain and simple. And I also want to get into some player empowerment movements that I talked about. So the Pac-12 United I touched upon was when the Pac-12, before they announced they were going to postpone their season, this was back in August, a group of Pac-12 players came out to fight for their rights with racial injustice and health and safety and economic rights. The players said they are prepared not to practice or play. This motivated people to band together and fight for their reforms. This summer, there have been signs that this is changing around the idea that players don't have a voice. College football athletes have called out coaches and administrators back to cause both social issues, Black Lives Matter, and political, changing the Mississippi flag, and demanded to be part of discussion about whether sports can be played during the pandemic. They've organized campus marches, they have threatened boycotts, and they trended on social media without stepping foot on a field. There was also the hashtag We Want to Play movement, which came about in the hashtag We Want to Play movement, which was led by Ohio State quarterback Justin Fields, which led for players continuing to play. This came out after the Big Ten announced they'd be postponing their season. And earlier this season, I didn't really touch upon this, but I want to, is Black Lives Matter in college football. So earlier this season, a big news story came out from the Washington Post about the way that college football is handling Black Lives Matter. And players from Kansas State and Arkansas State locked in arms on the sidelines with our teammates. Earlier scenes were shown out in West Virginia. Players all around the league are promoting racial equality before their games. Notre Dame did that. Duke players not only wore the Black Lives Matter logo on the back of their helmets, but the D logos on the side of those helmets, traditionally white, were black. NBC reported the color change was made in support of the Black Lives Matter movement, and that Duke intends to wear that design throughout the season. North Carolina wore a patch designed by linebacker Tolman Fox. The patch featured the raised, clenched fist of Black Lives Matter movement encircled by the words peace, justice, freedom, equality, and say their names. We are more than just athletes, Fox says. We are trying to help out with what's going on in the real world. There's a lot of bigger things than football right now. We're using our platform in order to help with those things. Iowa State wore patches honoring Jack Trice, the school's first Black athlete, in their game against Louisiana Lafayette. Trice died of injuries sustained in a football game in 1923, and the Cyclone Stadium is named in his honor. Clemson players have decals on their helmet with the choice of 4 stickers, and their opponent had Black Lives Matter on the back of their helmet. So, Black Lives Matter in college football. It hurts me that these coaches who are mad about having today off, I obviously understand the annoyance about it. I guess it hurts me that they don't recognize, they probably do. I don't want to speak for coaches, but I think the election is so much more than who is going to be our next president. The election is deciding the fate of many of these athletes' future with regards to their family and their income and their fight to have racial equality in this country that abolished slavery 180 years ago, whatever it is at this point. Yet, Black people are still not treated the same as white people, and we cannot have all lives matter until Black lives matter. Case in point. And so the election, taking the day off, is so much more than that. And I am really happy that schools are recognizing the Black Lives Matter movement, and they're recognizing it. And simple things like decals go a very long way. And for many people, having these huge college athletes that are names, these are celebrities to people. Having them represent the Black Lives Matter movement is so important. But I didn't mean to get too political there. I just wanted to speak on that. It's very important in today's day and age to touch upon that. And yeah, so coming up, everybody, we're going to transition more into current football, and we are going to look at the AP poll from this past week, along with some winners and losers of Week 9. So stick around for that.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm Danielle. Welcome back to our second segment of the day, where we are going to be looking at the AP poll plus some winners and losers from Week 9 of college football. So let's get into it. Interesting week, to say the least. Let's go with the poll. At number 1, we still have Clemson, and number 2, we still have Alabama. However, as we will get into, Alabama is making the case to be number 1. At number 3, we have Ohio State. At number 4, we have Notre Dame. At number 5, we have the Georgia Bulldogs. At number 6, we have the Cincinnati Bearcats. At number 7, we have Texas A&M. At number 8, we have Florida. At number 9, we have BYU. At number 10, we have Wisconsin, who did not play last week, and their game this week is up in the air due to COVID. At number 11, we have Miami. At number 12, we have Oregon, who kicks off their season this Saturday. At number 13, we have Indiana, who made the jump from 18, and this is their first time in the top 15 since the 1980s. At number 14, we have Oklahoma State. At number 15, we have Coastal Carolina. At number 16, we have Marshall. At number 17, we have Iowa State. At number 18, we have SMU. At number 19, we have Oklahoma. At number 20, we have USC. At number 21, we have Boise State. At number 22, we have Texas. At number 23, we have Michigan. At number 24, we have Auburn. And at number 25, we have Liberty. So Clemson received 33 first-place votes, 19 fewer than last week, and only have a 2-point lead over number 2 Alabama heading into their huge ACC matchup at 4th-ranked Notre Dame this week. Alabama, who handed Mike Leach his first shutout as a head coach with a 41-0 victory over Mississippi State, got the other 29 first-place votes. The rest of the top 5 remain the same, with Ohio State at number 3, Notre Dame at number 4, and Georgia at number 5. The unbeaten Liberty Flames, in their third year in the FBS, entered the rankings for the first time at number 25. Penn State is out of the rankings for the first time since 2016, following consecutive losses. Voters have differing opinions on how to handle Clemson. As you guys know, Trevor Lawrence did not play last week and will not play this week due to a positive COVID test. 6 voters who had Alabama number 1 on their ballots had Clemson third behind Ohio State. Lawrence was ruled out for the game against Boston College after testing positive for COVID, and Dabo Swinney announced the Heisman Trophy frontrunner, who is now no longer the frontrunner actually, will not be playing against Notre Dame either. Clemson made an 18-point deficit in the second half to defeat Boston College. 5-star freshman DJ Uiagalelei made his first start and got better as the game went on, with Clemson pulled off his largest comeback for a home win in program history. Alabama made easy work of Mississippi State and now has scored 35 points in 19 straight games. Liberty, who was eyed Saturday, beat out Northwestern for the 25 spot. Hugh Freeze's Flames are 6-0 against mostly light competition. Their biggest test comes so far this week at Virginia Tech. The last time Penn State was unranked was 2016. This week, the Nittany Lions upset. Next week, the Nittany Lions upset Ohio State in Happy Valley, then appeared in the poll for 36 straight weeks. Penn State Big Ten teams were removed from consideration for 2 polls this year because of the coronavirus delayed season. Penn State now has had their fourth longest active streak behind Ohio State, Alabama, and Clemson. Cincinnati at number 6 is their highest ranking since they finished the 2009 season at number 4. BYU is in the top 10 for the first time since 2018, and Indiana has had its highest ranking since they were at number 11 in 1987. So, in for this season, number 22 Texas beat Oklahoma State in overtime for the first road win against a top 10 team since 2010 and is back after a 3-week absence. Auburn returned after 2 weeks of being out of the polls following its rout of LSU. And Liberty's schedule now gets tougher with Virginia Tech, NC State, and Coastal Carolina still to come. UNC has lost 2 out of 3 and dropped out of the polls for the first time this season. Penn State's, like I said, their absence may be temporary with minimal games against Nebraska and Maryland coming up. Kansas State's 2-week stay ended with an ugly road loss to West Virginia. So here are some winners from this season. Let's get into it. Ohio State is first up on my winners. Remember when I said I smelled an upset from Penn State? Yeah, Penn State is probably the best team they will face this season, if aside from the cultural playoff, if they get in. And I was like, oh, Penn State has it, the revenge factor. Nope, they got crushed. Obviously, the score indicates it was much closer than it actually was. Ohio State, from their first play of scrimmage, Ohio State controlled the whole game, without a doubt. So they are a huge winner, especially with Clemson struggling this week after Trevor Lawrence has been announced out for their big game. Ohio State has a chance to move up in the rankings this week. Even if Clemson does win or something, if they do not perform well, they can move down and Ohio State could move up. Overall, they look absolutely amazing. Justin Fields looks incredible. He is moving up in the Heisman rankings as well. Then we have Cincinnati. The number I have not mentioned them much, and I apologize for that, because the number 7 Cincinnati shrugged off a challenge from another AAC contender and beat Memphis 49-10 on Saturday, riding an outstanding performance from a defense that is making the case for being the best in the country. They might even be good enough to reach the playoff. They're the best team in the group of 5. Notre Dame, next up on my winners. So Trevor Lawrence is still out for this week, and their defense looks absolutely amazing. They handled Georgia Tech pretty convincingly, and their game against Clemson is their biggest test of the season by far. But it will be interesting to see how the Fighting Irish fare out. And second up on my winners, we have Big Ten upsets, guys. Big Ten upsets took the Raids this week. Obviously, Michigan State upset Michigan, which was huge. What is Michigan at again? They fell. I know that. Michigan is at number 23 this week after being at 13 last week. They fell 10 spots. Michigan State handled them, to say the least. And also Indiana. The Indiana Hoosiers look feisty. So these upstart teams, we have Michigan State that could make a run if they continue to play the way they did. Even Rutgers doesn't look that bad this season, guys. Obviously, we haven't seen Nebraska play that much as well. So these upstart teams from the Big Ten, everyone always talks about Ohio State, Penn State, Wisconsin, but Michigan State and Indiana, guys, be on the lookout for them. And lastly, this could be a winner or a loser. Obviously, the Big 12. Oklahoma looked very good in their win, and Texas knocked a previously unbeaten Oklahoma State in overtime. However, with the Kansas State loss and the Oklahoma State loss, everyone now has one loss, and their playoff chances look a little lost, so it's a winner or loser depending on how you look at it. Oklahoma State was their best chance to get into the playoffs, and now it is likely they will not. Believe their odds dropped to 1% to reach the playoffs at this point. But I guess they are a loser. And continuing losers, we have Jim Harbaugh. He is 3-3 versus Michigan State, 3-8 combined versus Michigan State and Ohio State. He allowed 449 yards of total offense on Saturday to the Spartans. Is he a hot seat candidate? They haven't reached the playoffs since Harbaugh has been there, to say the least. Harbaugh came in. He obviously has a lot of recognition within the program. A hot coach. Everyone looked up to him. And so far, he has not produced that much. They have not reached the college football playoffs. They have not beaten Ohio State in his tenure. And is he a hot seat candidate? I believe he has a few years left on his contract, but it could be interesting to see. Obviously, Michigan is getting testy with how Harbaugh has handled everything. And LSU. LSU, the defending champs, look a little weak. There is no doubt about that. Even the most pessimistic outlooks for LSU's follow-up to last year's national championship could not have predicted this. Auburn racked up over than 500 yards on the offense, held the Tigers to 1.2 yards per carry to win 48-11, which dropped LSU to 2-3. You guys remember week 1, Mississippi State, who now we overhyped for sure. They had a record 623 passing yards against them. LSU's defense has created under first-year coordinator Bo Pirelli and has little hope of turning to the corners with games against Alabama, Arkansas, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and Florida. Remember when Mike Leach and Mississippi State were the talk of college football? That's another loser this season. It was only 5 weeks ago. Since then, the Bulldogs have gone from the toast of the FBS to one of the worst teams in the SECs, just as Mike Leach's offense has gone from explosive to non-existent. After scoring 40 points to beat LSU in the opener, Mississippi State has scored a combined 30 points in their last 4 games. The latest, a 41-0 blowout at Alabama, is even more lopsided than the final score suggests. So, people, there you have it. Those are your winners and losers of the week. And coming up, we're going to preview all of Week 10, the big games to watch out for and everything. So stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello, everybody. We are back on the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm Danielle. Thank you for joining me for our Week 10 preview. Can you believe we're on Week 10, people? This is a big, big week of games. We have Florida and Georgia. They are headlining the 2 big games, along with Notre Dame and Clemson. We also have the Pac-12 is back, and the Midwest American Conference, the MAC. The MAC comes back. Guys, it is a huge week, so no dilly-dally. Let's get into it. Week 10 of college football brings 2 big matchups between 2 top 10 teams. Number one, Clemson travels to number 4 Notre Dame, while number 5 Georgia takes on number 8 Florida in their annual neutral site rivalry showdown. Both games will carry college football playoff ramifications. This week also brings the start of the Pac-12 season. Like I said, it's going to be a strong effort for one of the teams in the league to crack the playoff picture, considering the conference is scheduled to play just 7 games. Still, the addition of the 5th and final power conference to the season and the presence of some marquee games make this upcoming week of college football one of the best so far. let's get into it. We have number 1 Clemson at number 4 Notre Dame. Clemson is a 6.5 favorite. This game gives the Alabama at Georgia game from October 17th run for its money as the most significant regular season game of the season. It also says something about Clemson that the Tigers are going to be on the road without their quarterback and are still favored by nearly a touchdown. That's a huge game to see. What we'll have to look out for is Notre Dame's defense, how Clemson fares with their true freshman starting quarterback as well. It'll be interesting to see. At number 8, Florida plays at number 5, Georgia, who are favored by 4.5 points. The unofficial SEC title game is also the unofficial SEC East title game is also a de facto college football playoff elimination game. Expected movement on the line as the world word tickers down from the SEC office this week if the Gators will have anyone suspended following Saturday's brawl with Missouri. Florida coach Dan Mullen was fined $25,000 and issued a reprimand for violating SEC bylaws governing sportsmanlike conduct after a brawl erupted during Saturday's game against Missouri. There is no place in college football for this kind of incumbent that took place at halftime of the Missouri at Florida game Saturday night. Everyone involved is responsible for meeting sportsmanlike conduct throughout the game, running on field to confront a game official, the gathering of teams in an on-field confrontation, and student athletes throwing punches are all disappointing at any time, but even more so as they support their healthy competition during a pandemic. Following the altercation, Florida defense line Zachary Carter and linebacker Austin Powell were ejected from the remainder of the game, and Missouri outside linebacker Trey Williams was ejected for flagrant unsportsmanlike conduct. So it'll be interesting to see how Florida fares with the recent news that has come down and the suspensions and everything. That is something to look out for. But that is the big game. That's the game I'm probably excited for. I won't lie. Number 9, BYU. Number 21, Boise State. This is a monumental game for BYU, who has 3 games left on his schedule to try and bolster its resume. The only 2 times the Cougars have been a single-digit favorite this season, they beat Navy 55-3 and Houston 43-6. They are a 2.5-point favorite. Guys, some Pac-12 action. Stanford at number 12, Oregon. I'm so excited for this game. The Pac-12 opens. Opening weekend features the Ducks debuting as heavy favorites. The Ducks are an 11.5-point favorite. The covering spread should be a goal for Oregon, who might seem to post some impressive numbers if they want to make the college football playoffs with just 7 games on their slate, assuming COVID-19 disruptions don't make it any shorter. My mom went to Stanford, so you guys might know who I'm rooting for. That is a huge game. I'm so excited for that. And lastly, on our little short preview here, we have number 23, Michigan, and number 13, Indiana. The Wolverines have won 24 straight against Indiana, so it probably explains why they're the favorites in this one, even after losing to Michigan State on Saturday. With the big win here, the Hoosiers could responsibly argue that they are the second best team in the Big Ten besides Ohio State, as Wisconsin's status remains out amid a COVID-19 outbreak. Those are the big games to watch out for this season, people. I realize I talk very fast now. I'll get the time here, but yeah, are you guys excited? What is the game you're most excited for this season? I'm probably most excited for Stanford and Oregon just because my mom, but I will actually not be watching that game. I will have my eyes glued on the Florida-Georgia game. I can't lie. Clemson and Notre Dame will be incredibly interesting. I have a close family friend that goes to Notre Dame, so yeah, lots of stiff competition. This is shaping up to be one of the best weeks in college football game-wise. Obviously, we have to watch the games to find out, but to end off our show here today, coming up, we're going to be looking at the top 10 plays from this week in college football. So stay tuned.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Danielle. Back with our final segment of the day, we're going to be looking at the top plays from Week 9 of college football. What a crazy week this was. I sadly cannot put it in game clips or sounds due to copyright reasons, so believe me here, we're just going to have to take my word for it. Some crazy plays. What was your favorite play of the week? Mine is number 1 on here, and I really loved it. But number 10, we have C.J. Lewis, who was a Boston College wide receiver. The Eagles start off scoring hot against number 1, Clemson, and were ahead 21-10 with 1 minute left before halftime. Quarterback Phil Djokovic dropped back and threw to Lewis in the end zone. The ball was swatted by Clemson's Mario Goldrich, but Lewis somehow tracked the ball, bobbled it, and came down with a touchdown. That would be the final score of the game for Boston College as they fell 34-28 to the Tigers. It's such an incredible play. I always love a good bobbling touchdown. And Boston College kind of proved that they can pull off an upset. At number 9, Ricky White for Michigan State wide receiver. The Spartans were driving up 3 with 6 minutes left against number 14, Michigan. White got one-on-one coverage near the right sideline, and that's all quarterback Ricky Lombardi needed as he heaved it to his number 1 receiver. While still falling to the ground, White came up with the ball and somehow completed this incredible catch to put the Spartans in scoring position to seal the game. Michigan would go on to beat Michigan 27-24, and White finished the game with 8 catches for 196 yards and a touchdown. At number 8, people, we have B.J. Williamson from Louisiana Tech, defensive back. It would be what could have been a nightmare was an incredible and rare heads-up play by Williamson. The redshirt sophomore picked off a pass in the second quarter against UAB and loudered the ball to Kalai Leader, who ran the ball back for a touchdown. Number 7, we have Shane Simpson, who is the running back from Virginia. He had a crazy touchdown in the first quarter. I mentioned this in Monday's podcast, Absolutely crazy, bonkers, mind-blowing, no other way to put it. Just his speed was incredible. He looked amazing. I would not be surprised if Virginia gets into the top 25 polls in the next few weeks with the kind of performance they had against UNC. At number 6, we have Tyron Wallace for Oklahoma State. He's a wide receiver. This is one of Wallace's 11 catches on the day, but it was definitely the best. Quarterback Spencer Sanders and the offense was at the 10-yard line when they gave Wallace a chance to win the one-on-one matchup. With the defender draped all over him, the senior caught the ball for a score and extended the team's lead to 30-20 in the third quarter. However, Oklahoma State would go on to lose 41-34 in overtime. Number 5, we have Deshaun Jamison for Texas defensive back. The kickoff started Kastrov as a catastrophe when Jamison dropped the ball in the end zone, but didn't stop the junior from making multiple Oklahoma State defenders miss before breaking free for a touchdown. The momentum-changing 100-yard kickoff return after the Cowboys were up 11 helped the Longhorns rally to force overtime. Number 4, Penn State didn't play too well on Saturday, but that doesn't matter because Jahan Dotson for Penn State wide receiver. Sometimes wide receivers just need one hand, as we've seen from this list, obviously. Dotson was able to adjust a throw from quarterback Sean Clifford while being defended by Ohio State's Sean Wade. He threw up his right hand to make the catch and got it past Wade for a 21-yard touchdown. Dotson would add another second-half score as part of his 7 catches for 133 yards in a loss to the Buckeyes. Number 3 on my list wasn't a play by anybody specifically. It was just a really cool moment. ESPN announcer Joe Tessitore, who is back working college football games after 2 years in the Monday Night Football booth, was on the call for the Boston College trip to Death Valley. The assignment was special for Tessitore because his son John plays for the Eagles. Instead of trying a 40-yard field goal, Tessitore shifted under center and ran a hard count, drawing Clemson offside. Since it was 4th and 2, the penalty gave Boston College a first down. Tessitore is under center, Joe Tessitore called. Sadly, again, I could not play the game, recap copyright footage. But how cool was that? It was just a really cool father-son moment. You could hear it in his voice how excited he was for his son, and I really enjoyed that. It was such a cool moment. And on the very next play, Boston College made Clemson pay for its mistake. Phil Djokovic looked to the end zone and found C.J. Lewis, who maintained his connection and made a juggling, highlight-catching touchdown catch. And we are not just talking about Clemson. It was Auburn lighting up Ole Miss at number 2 as the Alabama-based Tigers put up 49 points on Ed Orgeron's crew. And thanks to the 91-yard touchdown pass from Bo Nix, Auburn. I think Auburn's whole game is a highlight. They played absolutely amazing. Offense looked incredible. But at number 1, people, we have the mayhem from Rutgers. What else would you expect? That play, I lost count personally of how many laterals were involved in this play, 8, 9, but ultimately the 5th one was flagged for an illegal forward pass, which was so much chaos. The touchdown should have counted anyways. And special shout out to defensive lineman Aaron Lewis, who chucked the ball backwards over his head into next Saturday, yet somehow still found a teammate. Facing 4th and 32 and a double-digit deficit, Rutgers went for it with just over 2 minutes remaining, and while the play looked dead, they refused to give up, pitching the ball over the field. Seemingly every Scarlet Knight took their hands on the rock. This play cannot do justice. It is number one on principle alone. It was such a crazy, crazy, crazy play there, people. But that's it for today, everybody. I really appreciate you guys listening. Again, I really want you to stay safe and healthy these next few days. It is a scary time. We have a really fun weekend of college football, so look forward to that. I'm really grateful to be doing this for you guys as well. As always, make sure to leave us a review and subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps out the show. Leave us 5 stars. Leave us a nice review if you want. And we're so grateful to have you listening to us. And thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC College Football Podcast tonight. As always, I am Danielle. Be sure to follow us on our social medias as well. And give us a like, give us a follow, give us a shout out if you enjoyed the podcast. I enjoy hearing your feedback. So let us know what you think. But anyways, thank you guys so much for listening and have a great night. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, and let's get ready for college football.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network, from football to basketball, baseball to MMA, and even soccer. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast.